In the swirling game of power, where ambition tangles with ego and every move can tip the scales, there is one truth that reveals itself over and over again to those who have played this game long enough: commitment is a form of surrender. Not always in love. Not always in friendship. But in power? In influence? Commitment is currency. And those who spend it recklessly become poor very fast. That's the law. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. Now, I'm not saying go live your life isolated, bitter, or detached from emotion. This isn't about coldness. This is about clarity. Power doesn't care how you feel. It cares where you stand. And if you stand too close to one person, one ideology, one camp, you give up the ability to move freely. You give up options. You give up leverage. You become predictable. And in the world of power, predictability is death. Let me ask you, how many times have you seen someone rise to power not by choosing sides, but by playing both? Not by jumping into the fire, but by standing just far enough back to feel the heat without getting burned? That's not indecision. That's control. That's knowing the terrain, watching the players, and positioning yourself where the wind is blowing strongest. That's being a free agent. That's what this law teaches us. There is a story told often in power circles. It's not glamorous. But it's honest. Picture a war between two great kingdoms. Both want the allegiance of a small but strategically located city. That city doesn't commit. It listens. It nods. It entertains both sides. It gives neither what they want, full allegiance, but gives each just enough to keep them hopeful. As the war wages on, this small city becomes the real power. Why? Because both sides need it. Both sides court it. And by not committing, by refusing to nail its flag to one mast, it becomes indispensable. The world we live in rewards allegiance in the short term and punishes it in the long. Join a cause, and yes, you may gain passionate allies, but you gain enemies just as fast. Stand neutral, and you may not gain loyalists, but you gain something more valuable: the power to choose, to adapt, to navigate storms without going down with any one ship. Politicians know this. The most powerful ones are rarely the ones screaming on the front lines. They're the ones behind the curtain, whispering into both ears. The king's ear. The opposition's. The press. The people. Their true loyalty? To themselves. And that's not dishonorable. That's survival. That's strategy. That's the kind of thinking that lets you last longer than the others. Let's talk about seduction for a second, not just romantic, but intellectual, professional, emotional seduction. The greatest seducers never commit. They let you believe you're the only one. They let you fall into the illusion that you've captured them. But the moment you try to pin them down, you realize they were never fully yours to begin with. That's their power. It's their mystery. It's what keeps them interesting, irresistible, and above all, uncontrolled. In your own life, you've likely felt this too. The friend who's always on your side, always available, always loyal, admirable, yes. But over time, they become familiar. Maybe even taken for granted. Now contrast that with the person who's hard to read, who's friendly but never clings, who disappears and returns on their own terms. They carry a magnetism that loyalty can't quite replicate. Why? Because they're not yours. And people want what they can't fully have. Now imagine that same principle, scaled up. Corporations fighting over consultants. Governments negotiating with independent thinkers. Even social circles maneuvering to gain influence over the person who never quite picks a side. That person becomes valuable because they're unattached. Like rare art, not owned but displayed briefly. That's the paradox of power. It's not always about domination. Sometimes it's about distance. But this isn't easy. It takes restraint. It takes awareness. Because our instinct is to bond, to belong, to commit. We want to be part of something. And in many areas of life, that's a beautiful thing. Love. Family. True friendship. But when it comes to power, when it comes to negotiating your value in a world that trades in influence, you have to hold back. Just enough. You have to keep something of yourself in reserve. You have to be willing to walk away. The danger of commitment is not just that it limits your options, it also makes you blind. Once you commit, you justify, you rationalize, you defend. You stop thinking critically. You stop seeing the flaws in your allies and the strengths in your opponents. You become emotionally invested in a narrative that may not serve you anymore. And before you know it, your power is tied to someone else's fortune. If they fall, you fall. And no law of power advises that. History is filled with examples. Look at the Medici family of Renaissance Florence. They didn't rise by choosing sides. They rose by funding both. Bankers to the Pope and his enemies. Friends to artists and merchants. They made themselves too valuable to fight. And in doing so, they shaped a century. Or take Elizabeth I of England, courted by kings, begged for alliances, pressed for marriage. She kept them all at arm's length. She used their attention as leverage. She turned the refusal to commit into a tool of diplomacy. Her kingdom stayed stable because her options stayed open. Even in the corporate world, the freelancers, the consultants, the independent operators, they often command more respect than full-time employees. Why? Because they're not tethered. They can walk away. Their allegiance is earned, not assumed. That's power. Now, some people will call this disloyal. They'll say it's manipulative. But here's the thing, if you're honest about it, if you're clear that your commitments are flexible, that your trust is earned and not automatic, you're not betraying anyone. You're simply setting the rules. The real betrayal comes when people commit out of fear, out of insecurity, and then blame others when it all falls apart. Think about every major betrayal you've experienced. Was it from someone who never committed to you? Or was it from someone who pretended to, who made promises they couldn't keep, who locked themselves in and then resented the walls they built? False commitment is far more damaging than honest independence. And Law 20 asks us to choose the latter, not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. Because when you're not committed, when you're not owned, you're free. Free to observe. Free to negotiate. Free to evolve. And that freedom is what makes you valuable. It's what draws people to you. Not because they control you, but because they can't. You'll be tempted, of course. People will want you to pick sides. They'll say, "Are you with us or against us?" And the smart answer is always, "I'm with what's right. I'm with what works. I'm with what moves us forward." That doesn't mean you're disloyal. It means your loyalty is to principle, not personalities. To progress, not politics. And let's not confuse this with indecisiveness. Not committing doesn't mean never acting. It means acting when it's wise. It means choosing when you hold the upper hand. It means knowing that your greatest weapon in any negotiation is the ability to walk away, to shift, to change course when the wind changes. That's not weakness. That's strategy. It's also protection. The moment you commit, you give people a map of your heart. They know where to strike. They know what you'll die defending. And while that may be noble, it also makes you vulnerable. Power, in its rawest form, is often about unpredictability. About keeping others guessing. About not giving them the blueprint to your soul. And that comes from keeping some of yourself to yourself. Even in love, this law has its echoes. The most passionate relationships are often the ones where space exists. Where the two remain individuals, not just a merged identity. Where mystery lives. where the spark is kept alive by the knowledge that each person is there by choice, not by obligation. That's the power of not committing blindly, even in matters of the heart. So what should you do? Float through life unattached? No. Commit, but on your terms. Commit to your values. Commit to your mission. Commit to your growth. But when it comes to alliances, to sides, to movements, be cautious. Be aware. Know that every flag you fly limits the ones you can raise tomorrow. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it waits. And sometimes, it says no. No to the easy alliance. No to the tempting offer. No to the quick loyalty that feels good today but costs you everything tomorrow. When you hold your commitment in your hand like a rare coin, and you let others know it's not easily spent, they treat you differently. They court you. They persuade you. They show their value to you, not the other way around. And that's the shift. That's the pivot. That's when the power tilts in your direction. Because when you are not tied down, when you are fluid, when you move with intelligence instead of emotion, you become a force. You become the variable that others must account for. You become unpredictable. And unpredictability is not chaos, it's control, disguised. So remember this law. Tattoo it on the walls of your strategy room. Do not commit to anyone. Not because you don't care. But because you care enough about your power, your vision, your future, to protect it from the illusions of loyalty that lead so many to ruin. Let them chase you. Let them guess. Let them wonder. And above all, let them never own you. That is power. That is freedom. That is the game. And that is Law 20.